Today, we are cracking open the case file on what is, and this is no exaggeration, the trial of the century for modern football. This is so much bigger than just one club. We're talking about the integrity, the future, and maybe even the soul of the Premier League.
And it all boils down to this one absolutely staggering number: 115. That's how many times Manchester City is accused of breaking the financial rule book.
For what feels like forever, this has been the dark cloud hanging over one of the most dominant teams the sport has ever seen. So to really get what's happening right now, you have to rewind. We have to go back to the first time City ended up in the crosshairs.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to look at the prequel to this whole saga, the big fight with UEFA, because that really sets the stage. Then we'll dive headfirst into the Premier League's 115 charges. After that, we'll get into City's wild counterattack, a strategy some people are calling lawfare. Then, of course, the big one, the punishments, and the absolute carnage they could cause. And finally, we'll try to answer the question everyone's asking: when is this all going to be over?
Right, so before the Premier League ever got involved, European football's head honchos, UEFA, took their own shot at the champions. And this first battle, well, it taught everyone a lot about what was to come.
And UEFA came out swinging. The punishment they handed down was huge: a 2-year ban from the Champions League. Their investigators basically concluded that City had completely ignored the financial fair play rules. You know, the ones that are supposed to stop clubs from spending way more than they earn.
And the way they were accused of doing it is really the heart of this whole thing. UEFA claimed City's owners were just funneling their own cash into the club, but dressing it up to look like sponsorship money from companies like Etihad. The idea was to make their books look balanced when, allegedly, they weren't. Remember this accusation because it does not go away.
So you might be thinking, if the case was that serious, why wasn't City banned? Well, they appealed, and this is where it gets interesting. They basically won on technicalities. Look at that first row, the statutory time bar. That's just a fancy legal way of saying many of the charges were just too old. UEFA's own rules said they only had 5 years to prosecute. For the newer charges, the court said the evidence just wasn't strong enough. But, and this is so important, look at the bottom row. They were found guilty of not cooperating with the investigation and got slapped with a €10 million fine. So it was hardly a full-blown not guilty verdict.
And that messy affair brings us right up to the main event. After doing its own secret 4-year investigation, the Premier League dropped its bombshell case in early 2023. And this time it's a whole different ballgame. This right here is the absolute key. That little 5-year time bar rule that got City off the hook with UEFA, it just doesn't exist in the Premier League's rulebook. And that means investigators can go all the way back, over a decade, right to the beginning of the club's transformation. And this table just lays out the sheer, mind-boggling scale of it all. I mean, look at that top line. 54 charges just for inaccurate financial reporting. That's that same core accusation about disguised sponsorship money again. Then you've got 14 charges for things like secret payments to managers and players. And see that at the bottom? 35 charges for failing to cooperate. That theme of obstruction is back, and this time it's with a vengeance.
Okay, so let's make this feel a bit more real. Here are 2 of the alleged schemes. First, the league claims that one sponsorship payment of £67.5 million was mostly smoke and mirrors. Only $8 million allegedly came from the sponsor, Etihad. The rest, they say it came straight from the owner's pockets. Second, they allege that former manager Roberto Mancini actually had 2 contracts, a secret one on the side where he got paid consultancy fees through another club to hide his true salary.
Now, faced with this mountain of charges, Manchester City hasn't just played defense. No, they have gone on the attack, using a strategy so aggressive it's earned its own name.
It's called lawfare, and the idea is pretty simple and pretty brutal. The goal isn't just to win the case, it's to make the entire legal process so complicated, so expensive, and so long that you completely overwhelm and exhaust the other side. You're not just fighting the charges, you're using the legal system itself as a weapon. And if you think that's just an outsider's interpretation, get a load of this. This quote from a leaked email says it all. The club would rather spend $30 million on the 50 best lawyers in the world and sue for 10 years than cooperate. That pretty much sums up the mindset, doesn't it? And you know what? It's worked for them. In a totally separate legal battle, City actually sued the Premier League and won, getting some of the league's sponsorship rules thrown out. Now, legally that's one thing, but from a PR perspective, it was a masterstroke. It allows them to paint this picture that the very people judging them are incompetent and out to get them. So, the battle lines are drawn, which brings us to the question that's hanging over everything. What on earth happens if City is actually found guilty?
The stakes, well, they couldn't be higher.
The panel deciding this has almost unlimited power. We're not just talking about a fine. We could be looking at a massive points deduction, way beyond anything we've seen before. They could even strip City of past titles. And then there's the one nobody thought was even possible, the nuclear option, kicking them out of the league entirely.
But here's the twist. This isn't just a threat to Manchester City. A guilty verdict could seriously damage the entire Premier League brand. As one source put it, heavily punishing your most successful club is like killing the golden goose. It could call years of results into question and spook broadcasters all over the world.
And you can bet the other clubs are watching like hawks. Apparently, some rival owners think that for cheating on this kind of scale, relegation is the only punishment that fits. And if that actually happened, can you imagine the chaos? An entire squad of superstars would effectively become available overnight. It would be, as one expert put it, complete carnage in the transfer market.
Which, of course, leads us to the one question everybody keeps asking. When will we finally get an answer? When is this thing going to end?
Well, don't hold your breath for a single dramatic day in court. The whole thing is staged. First, the panel will decide if City is guilty or not. Only if the answer is yes do we move to a second hearing to decide the punishment. And even then, it's not over. Both sides can appeal. The bottom line is, this whole process is a marathon, not a sprint.
And this timeline just puts it all into perspective. The investigation started way back in 2018. The hearing itself just finished up at the end of 2024. Now, we might get an initial ruling sometime in 2025, but you see that question mark at the end? With all the inevitable appeals, a final, locked-in resolution might not happen until 2026 or maybe even 2027. We are still a long, long way from the final whistle.
And that leaves us with this final, massive question. When this verdict finally lands, is that the end of the story, or is it just the beginning of a whole new war? If City is cleared, the Premier League's authority is left in tatters. If they're found guilty, it could trigger years of new legal battles and completely reshape English football as we know it. Whatever happens, one thing is for sure. This is about so much more than 115 charges. It's a fight for the future of the biggest league in the world.